Yes, jazz lives here in Charlotte, as we always say. And one of the things we like to do as jazz lives here in Charlotte is get together on a once a month basis to talk about some of the great things that are going on in jazz here in Charlotte and going on around the area as well, around the region, around the country. And so, welcome to another edition of Conversations with Curtis. I am Curtis Davenport, as always, your host, and so glad to be with you. Yes, I know I usually don't have the earbuds in, having a few sound things going on tonight. So just trying to make sure that we can all hear each other, but hearing at this point loud and clear. So those are not growths in my ears, just a little bit of earbuds. But we want to thank you for joining us tonight. And we are so looking forward to a great conversation as we have the New York-based Grammy-nominated pianist John Chin, who will be joining us in just a few minutes. And John will be with us, of course, next weekend, paying tribute to McCoy Tyner in the Jazz Room. But before we get to that, as always, I want to start out by thanking the people who really make it possible for us to be here. First, we'd like to thank our sponsors who make Jazz Room, who make JazzArts Charlotte and Conversations with Curtis possible. If we can just take a look at those. Yes. So we want to thank, when we are incredibly grateful to our dedicated sponsors, the Knight Foundation, the North Carolina Arts Council, the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation, the City of Charlotte, the Infusion Fund, the Foundation for the Carolinas, and O's Place magazines. And of course, we also want to thank our great donors at all the levels that make it happen for us. So many that we can't mention all their names, but we'll just mention the categories and you'll see their names. We have our sustainers, our benefactors, our maestros, our arrangers, our composers, our soloists, our aficionados, and beyond that, of course, our JazzArts corporate sponsors. The list is growing. Remember, we started with a fairly small list, but so glad to have so many with us. And thank you all for believing in jazz here in Charlotte, and what we're doing and making everything we do, including Conversations with Curtis, possible. But without further ado, I want to bring on this gentleman who's a very special guest. And man, I'm very excited to have him back with us. Got to meet him a couple of years ago at our last live jazz room, or I should say, live jazz room Christmas that we had over at the Booth Playhouse. And just so glad to have him back here with us, as he will be playing with us this next weekend on the 19th and 20th, paying tribute to the music of the great McCoy Tyner. Please welcome one of the best pianists on the New York jazz scene. Please welcome Mr. John Chin.
Hi, everybody.
John, how you doing, man?
What's up? Nice to see you.
Don't know if that's just in my ear, or John, can you just say something again?
Oh, sure. Here I am. How's it going?
Okay. Just going to ask our producer, is that just me, or because there's a little bit of an odd sound coming out instead of John? I mean, I know John's voice is not that deep. So, just a couple of, just to make sure. Hopefully that's not, okay, is there?
My voice really deep right now?
Just going to also check with our audience. Is there anything? Okay, I'm just going to hopefully. Okay, it says I can't hear them. I see somebody has said already in the chat. Okay, oh, so you can hear them without any problem. Okay,
no problem.
Is an uh-oh for me. So, because it looks like I'm having a little bit of problem hearing John at this point. But let's try as best we can to forge on ahead. Okay, so John, once again, welcome. I'm just hoping and praying that whatever is happening here. Okay. Yeah, we're getting a whole Job of the Hutt thing going on here.
Oh, man. I was hoping for a Barry White, but that's a totally different.
Okay, what I'm going to do, Savannah, what I'll ask you to do at this point, I'm going to try, it looks like it's an audio problem on my end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to disconnect myself from these earbuds. If we can, just to start, to keep everybody with something that they would enjoy, let's hear a little bit of the artistry of John Chin at this point. We're going to go to a clip of John as he plays in one of my favorite rooms in New York, and that is Mesro. And we'll go to a little clip of John and his trio as they were in Mesro recently playing on Wayne Shorter's Speak No Evil. So if we can go to that. In the meantime, while you're doing that, I'm going to try to get myself settled here, and hopefully I'll be able to hear better when we come back. Thank you. If we can go to that now. Okay, well, sorry about the strange things that were happening there. Even looks like I ended up having to literally do the old computer thing of go back out and come back in again. But now the sound seems to be okay on my end. I love technology, man. Love technology. But in any case, but the good news for all of y'all is y'all got to hear a little bit more of how amazing Mr. John Chin is. So, John, now we're back. Can you hear me? Let's
I
say
can.
something.
Yes.
Okay, good. You can hear me. I can hear you. Let's just go on from here, man. And
All
hope for the
right.
best. So, in any case, so glad to have you again with us back here in Charlotte. I know, as we talked about, you've been Grammy nominated in the past a few years ago for your outstanding work on the work with the great Renee Marie, one of my favorite vocalists. Her album, The Sound of Red, and you're all over that album doing some amazing things with the amazing vocalist and really taking it to new levels. So congratulations on that. Also, we will be talking as we have an opportunity about your new album. That hope. Hey, we're keeping our fingers crossed that will be Grammy nominated as well. Got a very nice review and downbeat a couple of months back. Anything Mo's, along with Richard Julian, paying tribute to the music of the great Mose Allison. So a lot of fun on that as well. Great artistry and fun on that as well. But John, before we do anything else, let's go all the way back to the beginning and get started. You know, something that we are asking a lot of musicians about is something as we're doing going forward with our students. As you know, here at JazzArts Charlotte, our main mission is jazz education. And so as we're working with a lot of young men and young women who are aspiring musicians, or at least are enjoying it at this point in their life, what was you're a pianist now, but was that the first instrument that you had access to?
It was.
Okay.
My parents had an old Wurlitzer piano, that was the one. It was in the house. And I just, as a child does, maybe 3 or 4 years old, just kind of climbing up and hitting the keys. I mean, that's what my parents tell me. Then and then eventually they're like, oh, well, a sort of natural progression. Oh, maybe we should get him lessons. And so I have vague memories of that teacher. I don't remember his name, but I just remember how he made me feel. And he was, he made me feel good. He made me feel comfortable. And just really, I think, emphasized enjoying the piano, which is something I still emphasize with my students, even adult students that I teach now, and just this idea of having it be comfortable and having it be easy, sort of trying to always make it easy and have that kind of feeling as sort of a formula for success. But I played, and when you're that age, I mean, I've taught children that age, and it again, it's just about sort of having positive vibes on the instrument, generally speaking. And then later, as you take it seriously, sort of get into the grind of it, and have that be something to aspire towards. But I mean, at that age, how seriously? I mean, I wouldn't consider myself a prodigy of any sort. I mean, when I see prodigies, on YouTube, it's like it's like this stunning phenomenon that happens in these tiny children playing incredible pieces, and it's just like, it's mind blowing. And I certainly wasn't that, but I was definitely interested. And I remember my father telling me that they saw talent in me at a young age. They never told, I don't remember them telling me that I was talented, but they didn't need to tell me. I just enjoyed it. But I was just a kid. I was 5, 4.
You're just having fun, man.
Just having fun. And it wasn't that serious of a thing. And so I might be more interested in playing outside and playing piano. It's just a kind of a normal attitude. I think it wasn't something intense for me that my parents sort of put on me, even though in many Asian families, Korean, I should speak, many children end up playing an instrument of probably around my generation and younger. Maybe if there are Korean people that happen to be watching this, that I'm sure they could relate to what I'm
Well, if they're not watching now, man, they certainly, a lot of folks of all races and ethnicities, well, I'm sure will be watching as we have the repeat broadcasts of this over time. So obviously the piano had a great impact on you, because you've continued and become very successful in it. Since you talked about your Korean heritage and whatnot, but let me just ask, even before I get into that, because there's certainly something that I do want to get to, but when did you first have an interest in jazz itself, or what first drew you to jazz?
I think it's a minor miracle that it happened at all, really. I was my parents don't know about jazz. They don't come from that.
Yeah.
And I think that looking at the records, looking back on my parents' record, my dad was a classical music buff.
Hmm.
He loved his favorite piece was Tchaikovsky's Sixth Symphony, and my mother, I remember there was a Perry Como album and a Sister Sledge album. So it was like it was that kind of thing, and but no jazz. I don't, and they weren't aware of it, and so jazz wasn't really around when I was a kid outside of just what was sort of maybe Ray Charles doing a Pepsi commercial or singing the national
I remember that.
yeah, and singing Georgia or Aretha Franklin or the Saturday Night Live band. Those things sort of made an impression on me, and I would consider them to still be influential. This soul music, Ray and
Yeah.
Aretha and that kind of thing, and we didn't even get their jazz radio station. It didn't have enough wattage, right? And
Okay. Yeah.
so,
You're in
and
Southern
so
California, right?
I was in Southern California, and I remember, hearing jazz. My mother had a friend that lived closer to the radio station, and we put on the station. I'd be like, what's this? It was a revelation.
Hmm.
And then I made an effort to buy one of these big 10 boxes or 10 cassette blank tape packs.
Wow.
And I would show up, I would go to the house, and I would record the radio on cassette, and I would bring the radio home with me, and I would listen to it that way. And that's how I got it. Obviously, this is before, YouTube and all that. So
Yeah.
that was the only way. And so it just somehow I was drawn to it. I don't know. It wasn't because my parents were into it. It just was somehow in the ether, and I just yearned for it somehow. And so at the time, this idea of playing by ear, right?
Yeah.
And the radio station that we did get was the Wave, right? It was,
yeah.
It was like the Wave radio,
the smooth jazz, yeah,
smooth jazz, contemporary, and so there would be some nice pieces, and I would learn how to play them by ear, right? Eventually, this is maybe preteen, and I would learn them, and oh, this is cool. Okay, this is nice. And then every once in a while, the Wave would play like something a little more. It was slightly more sophisticated harmonically, and
Sunday afternoons usually, or
yeah,
at night.
right. And I couldn't figure it out, and I was like, "What is this? What is this?" And especially when I had those cassettes, I'm like, "What is this? This is incredible." And then it was this idea. It was this idea that jazz music. You listen to Coltrane or whoever really, and they're playing a million notes all at the same time, and I'm drawn to it, right? I think it sounds good, and I'm like, how are they playing all these notes? And I would go to the piano. I'd move my fingers on the piano as fast as I could. I'm like, I sound terrible. What are they doing? I thought it would work, right? And so I'm like, I don't understand. And so it was very sophisticated. And later, it just dawned on me that jazz music was kind of this ultimate music. It was ultimate music, like the artistry and like the technical facility. There's a sort of athleticism that's associated with it. With some, like John Coltrane is a perfect example.
Yeah.
And I was like, there's no way that these guys know every note that they're playing. They're playing there's no way. Impossible. Impossible.
Oh, yeah.
And when it dawned on me that they were completely aware of every single note that they play, as fast as they played it, I was stunned. And I was like, these guys are superheroes. Like, this is ultimate music. And I was an ambitious kid. And I was like, I want to learn how to do this ultimate music. I want to because I was trying to play by ear, and I could only transcribe and play very simple things. And so I was so inspired that when I was 15 years old, I started taking jazz piano lessons, and I was playing in a jazz ensemble. And it was like, that was it. Like, I listened to jazz radio. I loved it. And I would go to the record store. And at this time, I'm sort of dating myself, but at this time, the CDs were kind of a new thing. And and I would go, and there was a record store called the Warehouse near my house.
Yep.
And I would go to the jazz section. I didn't know anything, right? Because nobody in my family had any information for me.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, which one? Which one do I buy? And I'd buy one like with a piano on the cover. Or
Yeah.
I bought Branford Marsala's Crazy People music because
Oh, that's a classic.
it had a Grammy sticker on it. That was the only reason I bought it. And then I think maybe like the drumline teacher or something told me about Chick Corea acoustic band. That was a new record. And I bought that record and I listened. I was like, this is incredible. It's so deep and it was just mind blowing. And so I guess through that, I had decided, like I said, that this is like this ultimate music, ultimate musicianship, ultimate creativity, ultimate technical facility, like on all counts. And I wanted it. I wanted to be able to do it. And so that was it, I think, and so like that, there was that. But of course, at the core of it, there was the music, just loving the music so much on such a deep level. And I don't know why. This is what I'm saying. I didn't grow up. It wasn't around me when I was, 7. I was listening to pop radio at that time, and I was listening, and then I got into classic rock and I got into rap. I got into Run DMC at the time. And I got into Led Zeppelin, and I got, and I got into like these David Foster movie soundtrack things. And it just, I don't know. That's how it happened. And here I am.
And here you are. As a lot of folks have said, man, you didn't choose jazz. Jazz chose you,
Right.
and just brought you in. Let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned your heritage and parentage being your parents being Korean, and jumping ahead quite a few years, but it was something that drew a bit of attention for you a little bit earlier this year. Naturally, many of us are unfortunately aware of the events this past March in Atlanta when this crazy man, for lack of a better term, decided to take whatever issues he had out on mostly Asian women in various places around the area, murdering quite a few, and just a horrible, unspeakable incident. And I know a lot of those events led you to write a very moving piece, and just scrolling back to the beginning of it here, that was published this past June in JazzTimes. And you talked about racism, yes, on being an Asian American jazz musician, the racism and the challenge of indifference. And you had some very poignant words that you shared that caused a lot of people at least to pause and stop and think about what was said. And we don't, unfortunately, have time to go through the entire piece, but I will encourage any of you who can, you can even go through Google and find it. If you put in John Chin and JazzTimes on racism, you'll be able to find the piece. And one of the things you said there, John, was the biggest challenge that you face. One of the biggest challenges is not hate, but indifference. And let's, if you don't mind, I know it still is a difficult thing to talk about, as I can imagine it is, but if you could talk a little bit about what does that indifference look like to you? Could you expound a little bit for the audience on that?
Well, I think that, it's exactly that. It's sort of not having a voice necessarily. And like those women that were killed, they were obviously, to the man that killed them, were not human beings, not regarded as, people with lives like the rest of us. And so, I think that everyone on a certain level understands what that means to be invisible to someone else.
Yeah.
I think especially minorities, and this idea that you are a thing, an object. and so people may not be interested in what you have, what your opinion is on something per se. And so, you know, being who thinks of a jazz musician, an Asian jazz musician? Who thinks of that?
Yeah.
Who is that? No one's mind does anyone think jazz musician and just immediately think an Asian person. I mean, this is, let's be honest about this.
Yeah.
And so, and on some level, it makes sense, right? Like the history of this music, it's black music, invented by black people, and there's a legacy there, a long and glorious legacy of this music, and people sort of following suit. And so, of course, in the history of this country, what we're talking about are white people and black people, essentially.
Mhm.
We're really going to pare it down.
Yeah.
Not someone that looks like me, certainly not. And so, just in general, if you think about just the media in general, American media in general, like, when do you think of an Asian male in our consciousness, American consciousness, as a male lead? How about an Asian person, in the media that, okay, how about name one that doesn't know karate or martial arts? Okay, number one, can you think of one? And is that person male?
Hmm.
Probably not.
Yeah.
If you're really searching for it. And so that's the thing, is that in light of those recent events, and of course these attitudes are not new, but in light of those
Unfortunately.
events that happened, I took the opportunity to say something.
Yeah.
And I wanted to have one small voice for a community of people, a huge community of people,
Yeah.
mind you. I dare say a majority on this planet.
Yeah. Yeah. Keep it real, man.
But regardless, in the United States, sort of not sort of viewed upon in this way as even other minorities are. So as an Asian, when I was coming up, I mean, you talk about starting my career as a jazz musician. I mean, you talk about against all odds, and trying, and this pursuit. And you can imagine, for instance, like my family, my parents, like, what, you're gonna what? Are you kidding?
Yeah.
And so, and of course I had the audacity, right, to actually try and follow through on it. And so there's, and people, and Asian people, and I was speaking with, my cousins during that time. And she was the one that mentioned to me this idea of indifference, and how people see her in the workplace as just a worker, as just a thing, not a human. And I think that a lot, and she was telling me, and I think a lot of people do this, is that they, in a way, you use the indifference to your advantage. And you sort of fly under the radar, and you get whatever you need to get done, you get done under those circumstances, because that's the hand you're dealt, right? And so if you're going to sit there and you're going to try and be an activist, or if you're going to try and speak up, I mean, who knows, right? I mean, that's definitely more work to do that.
Yeah.
You're definitely rolling the dice when you do that. But as an artist, I dare say it's a responsibility that you do that.
Yeah.
And so I thought I should say something. I had to say something in light of all of this. It had been getting ridiculous.
Yeah.
And people there were people during the pandemic, just random
I know.
acts of violence against old Asian people. I was just like, what? Are you kidding? And it was disappointing, to say the least.
Absolutely.
And so, as a jazz musician, there are voices, there are Asian people that are trying to say something out there in this in this genre of music, this gift that was created by a minority of people that has been shared with the world and popularized very quickly after those first recordings, and people really gravitated toward it, and in my opinion it's the greatest music in the world. I've
Mine
dedicated
too.
my life to it,
Yeah.
and so in every way I've put, I'm all in.
Hmm.
You know what I'm
I hear you, man.
saying? And so and there are plenty of people outside of just white people and black people that have dedicated their lives to
Yeah.
this music. you know um there's a young pianist here in New York, Miki Yamanaka,
Oh, okay.
who came, and I remember when she showed up. She's a Japanese pianist, and she just wanted to soak it in, and she was there, and she was out there on the scene trying her best. And man, she's got gigs now, good gigs.
Yeah.
She's making some music, and it's beautiful. And of course, there are people like Helen Sung, and
Yes.
out there, incredible pianist, and Linda O is making
Basis
incredible music. And then
extraordinaire. Yes.
and like there are trailblazers like uh uh Toshiko,
Yes.
came around. She was
Toshiko
around,
Hiroshi. Yes.
and so many actually,
Yeah.
and it continues with different
Hmm.
influences. This is the nature of the music. And
Yes.
so I guess what I'm saying, what I was trying to say with that piece, aside from what I've already said now, is just like, well, look, we're here, we have something to say, our voices are valid. And
Yeah.
so how we get those voices out there, I mean, who determines it? It could, I guess, the powers that be, the people. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm doing my best to try and get it out there. And my last record is a tribute to Mose Allison, of all people.
Yes. Of all people,
I mean, it's
the
not like,
self-described middle-class white boy,
I
isn't
mean, it's true. It's
it?
true. And so I'm not I'm I'm not pandering.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to make, somehow, I don't know, playing the race card. I'm certainly not playing the race card out here.
Yeah.
Certainly not artistically.
Sure.
And I do have things to say about that, musical things to say about my heritage. Of course I do,
Hmm.
and that will come in time. Um, but but in light of all the violence, and in light of in all of this, and this idea, like the hashtag was Stop Asian Hate.
Yeah.
That's the hashtag. And okay, it has a ring to it, whatever that means. But at the end of the day, it's the indifference that kills us. It's the
Yes.
apathy that kills us. All of us, for
Yeah.
one reason or another. And so in a way, we all have to be activists. And so I'm saying something, for my little demographic that I come from, and I mean, I personally, I identify as American.
Hmm.
I wake up in the morning and go, "Oh, I'm Asian today."
Yeah.
Wow. I don't, who does that?
Yeah.
But I'm I'm in Brooklyn. I live in Brooklyn, like, and so being American, that's how that's sort of my experience. That's how I see it. And
Yeah.
patriotic. And I love it
Hmm.
here. And I grew up here. I don't know what it's like to live in Korea.
Hmm.
I grew up in Los Angeles. People could tell me, go back to where you're from. I'm like, are you talking about Encino? What are we talking about?
Yeah, man.
You know? And it's simply based on how I look. Obviously it's that, right?
Yeah.
And so I ask people to sort of take a look at this, what I would consider an underrepresented group of people,
Yeah.
and just check it out. You know,
Yeah.
give it a listen. Open your mind. You might like it. God forbid.
Yeah.
You might like
Yeah.
it. It might touch you at least for me. I'm American, and many of the Asian jazz musicians that I know, many of them are not necessarily American per se,
Yeah.
but are still, but who cares? This is, we're talking about music.
Yeah.
Music is language, is universal language. It is the only, it's
Beautiful.
like one, it's like the one of the few universal languages. And this music is being sort of having, being privileged to have traveled around the world, you know, like has opened up so many doors for me. And and people you get to meet from all these different cultures because of our love of music, our that commonality. It's an incredible thing.
Yes, it is, man. It is. And
So
your article made such an impact, I know, on so many people. I just even got to read some of the social media comments, and everyone I saw was just so positive and so supportive. I'm sure, unfortunately, there were some that weren't for you, but I'm just pleased that what I did read. And I'm just, as we're talking here, John, I just was thinking of names because, you know, I've been in jazz or around it for over 40 years now. And I remember my first exposure to an Asian jazz musician playing in this country was with the Heath Brothers when Kira Tana was their
mm,
drummer, you know,
yeah.
fine Japanese drummer.
Mhm.
And that time my roommate brought in some records from Sadao Watanabe, and I
Yeah.
heard him when he was in his Grover clone
Oh
period. Then as
man.
I got into the music and I started to back up and listen to this cat back in the 60s, you know, when he
Right.
was doing some amazing work, man, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and as my brother here is just saying, folks, just open your minds, look for other avenues into this music, and you'll find so much creativity out there. I just thought just one name that also popped into my mind. I'm sure you're probably familiar with her, being on the New York scene, young Japanese organist. I mean,
Mm,
Akiko, and I'm not even going to
correct.
yeah, thank you, because
Mhm.
I know I'd mess up her last name if I tried to say it. I just think a lot of terms of Joe Mag's wife, but you know,
Right.
but I heard her first, just one of these stations was playing on the TV. I says, "Who is this?" And she was killing it, you know, in that, you know, soulful Erlin bag, man,
Yeah.
you know, and just
Swing it.
so many incredible musicians out there, man. So,
Yes.
but
And, you know,
let's.
at the end
I'm
of
sorry.
the
Go
day,
ahead, man.
though, I just, at the end of the day, none of us want to be. I mean, I know I talk about like listen to Asian jazz musicians, and yes, it's true. But at the end of the day, we're not defined necessarily by the way that we look.
Yeah.
You know, this is music. We're talking about music, and
Amen.
so that's what it really comes down to at the end of the day. And so I guess in a way, you know, people are indifferent to jazz music as it is, you know,
Well,
and so
ain't that the truth?
and so, you know, what are we talking about? I mean, we need to find unity here
Yeah.
in a big way. And so um especially when people working in this music, musicians and presenters and writers and so on, everyone in the jazz community, we all sort of have to be activists, I believe,
Hmm.
because it's such an uphill battle
Yeah.
in this space. um and so i'm just I just I want people to know me for just being a jazz musician, really.
Yeah.
That's kind of it. Just as a human,
And they
essentially.
will. Especially, well, we'll start with our Charlotte audience here. Excuse me. Those that don't know you already, hopefully you'll, if you're in the area, you'll come out and get to know John next weekend as he's here with us playing the music of McCoy Tyner. I want to talk about the music of McCoy and its influence on you, but first I want to talk about your amazing group. Now, I understand you're bringing your New York group down with you. We're very excited. Joe Martin on bass, the amazing Rudy Royston, man. Rudy Royston on drums. That cat, like I said, I've just been fanboying over him for, you know, a long time now. That's when we were even talking in the pre-show and you told me you were bringing Rudy. I'm like, my mind is like, I'm gonna get to meet Rudy Royston, man. This is
Right.
cool. You know?
Yes.
But and also, I hear you're having a special guest with you who will probably be familiar to our JazzArts Charlotte audience. He's been with us as one of our educators and part of everything
we do for a long time. My friend, the great Chad Eby, is going to be joining us on saxophone. So we'll just be glad. It's going to be truly amazing, killer music. But then again, you're stepping into the shoes, even by playing the music of McCoy Tyner, of one of the true icons in the music. I think I can safely say that there is nobody who has, at least in jazz, who has touched the piano in the last 50 years, at least, the last half century or more, that has not been influenced some way by the great McCoy Tyner. Of course, some of you know him from his music being part of the iconic John Coltrane quartet. Some of you know from his solo work, but again, he has influenced everybody. So let's talk about how McCoy Tyner has influenced John Chin. Why his music, and how has he been an influence on you?
Well, like you said, I mean, to not know McCoy Tyner is to not know jazz piano.
Yeah.
And so, and I even think, as great as he is, I think still underrated. Believe it, that's my actually my opinion of it.
Yeah.
I think still underrated. And having an opportunity like this, and it's so awesome to have an opportunity like this. And I, I got to thank Lonnie and OC for having me, and JazzArts Charlotte for having me do this project, and sort of taking another deep dive into McCoy and his sound and his iconic sound, and it's so definitive, so recognizable, and underrated accompanist, actually. Just with that classic record with John Coltrane and Johnny Hartman, and how he would play behind Johnny Hartman, or that other one, the Ballads record with John Coltrane, and how he would play. And if I'm not mistaken, I think on that John Coltrane Ballads record, I'm not sure if John Coltrane takes a single solo actually on that record. I think he's just playing melodies. And McCoy,
you're right. As I'm thinking about it now, I had to run it back in my hard drive. Yeah, you're right, dude.
It's kind of heavy if you think about it that way, and on many levels, and the way that McCoy accompanies vocalists, and of course John Coltrane, it's really a stunning thing, and it's no wonder that he has been such a consummate Blue Note sideman. For Joe Henderson, for Wayne Shorter, Freddie Hubbard. I mean, some of the greatest greatest jazz records that have ever been made, and he's the one. He's the pianist, and just that makes him one of the most influential pianists there ever was, because he happens to be playing on a huge bulk of the greatest records ever made. So
no accident, man.
Exactly. And so if you listen to it, and then with free jazz and taking it, and we're talking about a love supreme, you know, I mean, that's McCoy. That's McCoy,
That it is. And I was just listening, if I could just jump in on that, I was just listening to that live in Seattle, that new one, that new version that just came out, and listening to even a different side of McCoy there, as he's really pushing Train, to untold places before. It's just, I was just even hearing something from him that I hadn't heard before, but I had to get that out before I go ahead, man. I'm still hyped on that record. My son got it for me for my birthday, and it's been in my head like the past couple of weeks. So there I am. Go ahead, man.
Wow, your son got that for you? Wow, that's
well, he knows how to keep dad happy. You know what I'm saying? As long as I'm still paying tuition, man.
Right. Okay. But like, I think about John Coltrane. Of course, John Coltrane is an icon, no question. I mean, there's no question about that. But if you think about Coltrane's sound, and how much McCoy sort of played a role in Coltrane's sound during those years, McCoy is central to that. There is no Coltrane sound of that sort without
Yeah.
McCoy. It's not.
That's true.
It's something else.
Mhm.
And McCoy is as big a part of those records, as anybody. I would say,
Yeah.
including John Coltrane. I mean, it was a true collaboration.
Oh, I agree. I think about what separated, because some people say what separated, say, the Atlantic Coltrane, which was very good in itself, from the Impulse Coltrane. And the big difference here is Atlantic was good, but Impulse, there was McCoy.
It was McCoy, right? That
And
classic.
there you have it. That's what really took them to new places. And some things,
Yes.
even just listening to him on that so-called Lost album that came out a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
that one that had been in the Can from Van Gelder studio all those years, and I'm listening to what seems to be the iconic piece coming out of that one. They call it, didn't even have a title. I think it was just called Untitled Original,
right.
11383.
Right.
And listening to McCoy on that one, where he comes after Coltrane with block chords out of the gate there, and then just he's like holding on, chase a train all the way through it, and just
Seriously.
amazing to listen to.
It is. He is such a giant in that sense, and creating that sound, and I think about it. McCoy is extremely iconic, and of course for this concert, we're paying tribute to him and his sound and his influence, and I had invited Chad to sort of play the role of the horn player, because so much of McCoy was, like I said, in collaboration with a great horn player. So much of it, I couldn't ignore it, and I didn't feel like playing that music just as a trio would really do it justice in a way. I mean, even McCoy as a leader would always hire a tenor saxophone player, and so very often anyway, and so, but artistically speaking, it was like, well, what am I gonna do with this? I'm posed with a question. I'm gonna do this McCoy Tyner. But am I going to sound like McCoy Tyner? Like, what does that mean artistically when you're presented with something like that? And so I'm going to be putting my own stamp on it. I'm going to be playing tribute, but I think about McCoy, and I think about that question, and how he handled that question, and because one of his first records as a leader was a tribute to Duke Ellington.
That's right. Yeah, on Impulse. Yeah.
And so. If you listen to that record, I mean, he still sounds like McCoy, obviously.
Yeah.
But these are the questions, I think, what I don't want to be is a clone. I don't think that's not really artistically, I think it is controversial.
Yeah.
If you just sound like someone else. So I'm sort of like taking a psychological profile of McCoy in a way, sort of diving into this and sort of pondering the question of like, okay, well, I'm doing McCoy, but how am I gonna do it? Am I trying to be a clone? Well, no, I've sort of let that go. There are things in my playing that obviously I'm influenced by McCoy, and like everyone that plays jazz piano is, and so I think there are going to be some nice surprises that we're going to be bringing to this concert. Maybe not reinventing, but certainly trying to be artistically valid and push. And part of the tradition of this music, of jazz music, is to push the envelope. It's always been pushed. That is a part of the tradition, actually. Not to sound like someone who came before you, but to actually move this music forward. And I definitely subscribe to that, and I believe in that tradition. I believe in the tradition of jazz, and so this is a perfect sort of opportunity to pay homage to the great McCoy Tyner, but also in this sense, sort of like pushing that needle forward, getting it out there, and trying to make a statement as an artist as much as I can.
Well, I'm looking forward to, as I say, being the MC, I have the best gig in the world, man, because I get to see every performance from up close and personal, man. So definitely looking forward to it. And don't forget, just as a reminder, folks, that's going to be next Friday and Saturday. That is the 19th and 20th of this month at the Booth Playhouse. John Chin Trio reimagining the music of the real McCoy, as it says, one of his finest Blue Note albums, McCoy Tyner. So definitely get your tickets for that. Want to get some questions from the audience. I see there are a couple in there, but one more thing before we go to the audience, John, that I do want to touch on with you. We've talked about your recent Anything Mo's album, which is a lot of fun and terrific to listen to. But I know there was another album you had a few years back, kind of a collaboration you did with some of the finest jazz musicians around New York, one called Fifth, as I remember it now. And I believe you had on it is Stacy Dillard and Tivon Pennicott, and also on drums, the late, great Lawrence Leathers was along with you on that one. Tell us a little bit. Yes, there's Lo right there. Just an amazing talent that is just tragically gone too soon. Talk a little bit about, if you would, I know that album was very personal for you. Let's talk a little bit about how that came together and why, among the amazing work you've done over your career, why that one sticks out to you among what you've done.
Well, I mean, you know, it was Spencer Murphy and Stacy Dillard, Tivon Pennicott, Lawrence Low Leathers, and myself. And Stacy, Spencer had asked me to play these regular gigs at Smalls Jazz Club on a Monday night. The set starts at 1 a.m.
Yeah, good old Smalls.
and it would usually start at 2 a.m. because the band previous would be going. And you know, there's something about Monday nights in New York. You know, Monday nights are professional nights out, right? All the amateurs go out on Friday and Saturday, right? And they do their thing, and the professionals, you know, we're usually working on Fridays and Saturdays.
Yeah.
Whether you're a musician or work in the service industry, you know, those are the good nights.
Yeah.
And so Monday nights, those are professional nights out. That's when, you know, and there, you know, there's not so much riffraff, and you know, it tends to be a little more civilized.
The cats are out, yeah.
and jazz musicians go out to hang out with jazz musicians generally. And so we, you know, a slot on a Monday night at Smalls Jazz Club at 1 or 2 a.m. That's a room full of jazz musicians.
Oh yeah.
And that was our slot. And so the thing is that we really tried to capture those musicians. That was the idea. That was the challenge for us. And normally, you know, that room would just be chatting super loud, but we had this uncanny ability to be able to silence that room and really be able to have them sort of be engaged in what we were doing. And so that gig lasted, you know, for a couple of years of Monday nights that we did that. It was a extremely influential time in my life, I think in all of our lives. And we were really exploring this idea of playing together. And it's such a rare thing that happens, especially in this day and age, when you have something regular like that with the same set of musicians. And there were other musicians that rolled through, but of course, the ones that we made this record, I knew I had to document it.
Yeah.
I knew that we had to go into the studio. And so a part of it was that we had this idea about having sort of these solo improvisation interludes in between songs. And the idea was they're only supposed to be 20 seconds long. But the improvisations were so good, I couldn't cut any of them. As a matter of fact, I spliced some together, you know, take one and take two, because they were both equally good. And so Lawrence did one for us, solo drums, and it is especially poignant now that he's gone.
Yeah.
And you know, when I listen to it, it's a before it was an emotional experience, and now more than ever it's an emotional experience. And I have a song on there that I wrote called "I Won't Argue with You," and I always introduce the song as like, you know, it was part of a musical that I had sort of co-written, and it was about a moment between a mother and a son, and the mother sort of accepting the son for who he is and who he loves. And in the lyric is, "I can't tell you who is beautiful and who isn't. I see scars, you see beauty. I won't argue with you. She sings that to her son. And the song is about that moment of acceptance, that sort of very personal moment between a mother and a son. And we explore that. I hope that our audience can get a chance to listen to that song and sort of explore that moment in their own minds as we do it. But I remember telling Lawrence about that for the first time, and that really changed the song after I told him the story and played it, and it got heavy, and we captured that moment in so many incredible moments. And so when you have solo improvisations on a recording, we're no longer on stage. We're sitting next to you.
Yeah.
Whispering in your ear. It's an intimate experience. And so the record, yes, is very personal. It's very close. It's very intimate. So I hope you guys get a chance to check it out because it is very dear to me. And I think everyone that plays on it. So it was a special time for us, a very special time.
And once again, for those of you who are looking forward or maybe writing it down, the album is called Fifth. Yeah, there it is. FITH. Unfortunately, it's under the dreaded, as I found it on Apple Music, it's under the dreaded various artists. So it's not going to be something that's going to be easy to find in that way. Perhaps if you do put in, say, John Chin, or if you put in Lawrence Leathers or one of the musicians involved, it might cause it to come up because it will be associated with them, but it's not under the name of any particular artist. But it is a tremendous effort there. And definitely worth your time listening to some of our finest jazz musicians of today at the height of their powers. And really, as John was saying, doing it really for each other and really just getting into that personal space with themselves. Deeply moving. We're almost out of time, man, but I do want to give an opportunity. I did see one question in the chat that was coming up, and I don't want to make sure we miss this one. We have from Mr. Taha Arif asking the question. I believe it's back on the screen now. How do you practice when learning vocabulary from the greats? And what about when developing your own style and unique vocabulary? How do I practice that? So clearly he's a young musician looking for some direction and advice there. So John, I'll leave that to you.
Oh man, how much time do we have? Holy moly.
Well, I mean, I know, like I said, you're the one who's got to move, brother, so not on me, man.
Practice when learning vocabulary. Well, I'm glad you used the word vocabulary, because what does that imply? It implies language. Vocabulary is, jazz music has a language of various types. And so with that, how do we learn a language? What's the best way to learn a language? Immersion. If I need to speak Spanish, if I need to learn how to speak Spanish, and I move to Spain, or I move to Mexico, or, that's the fastest way to learn. And so how do we do it in jazz music? Immersion. You're constantly listening to it. You're in the country of jazz. You're always listening to it. That's been my approach. I didn't do many transcriptions. And almost by design, because in the second part, what about when developing your own style and unique vocabulary? Well, I didn't want to sound exactly like someone else. I wanted to sound like me. And so much of it is not only understanding where this music comes from and being in that country, but also sort of interpreting what that is and having a very focused idea that, wait a minute, I want to have a sound of my own that is valid. When you start out, it's hard. It's harder, and you have to accept, and all jazz musicians do, that when you start out, you're going to sound terrible. Okay? It's going to be a while. But the key to this, and of course, so many other things, is perseverance and belief and desire. And if you have those things and you're disciplined about it and you have a strong artistic sense, eventually it will happen. It will, one way or another. You don't have to play the fastest. You don't have to be the slickest, but you can be you. Every single one of us can be ourselves and have a valid voice on this. So for what it's worth, I wish I had a quick fix, Pow! There you go.
Yeah.
You know, but that's not how this music is made. This is not the way that it works. We're a jazz musician, you know, we're playing the long game. You know, we don't have retirement parties. We play until the day we die, literally, you know. Elvin on stage days before he died, you know, and so that's just one example. That's all of us. So as a young person, when learning this music, you have to have patience and understand that you're playing the long game here if you're serious, you know, and you just take your time and just enjoy it. Enjoy the journey. It really is about the journey, and just just feel it out. I know you want to sound good right away. I know you do.
Yeah.
But if you just take your time, enjoy your life, find that voice, let it happen, it will happen. And that's my advice. That's my advice.
And that's it, man. And that, I don't see any questions other, and we're at the top of the hour. So that is a perfect place to at least draw things to a close with that great advice from John Chin. John Chin, I can truly say this has been a pleasure, man. This has not been work at all this hour. Just hearing you, hearing your perspective.
So fast.
I'm sorry, go ahead, man.
It just went by so fast. Thank you, Curtis. You're amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You know, I'm looking forward, and I know I speak for all of us at JazzArts Charlotte and many of our audience members. I'm looking so forward to having you here with us next weekend. So once again, a reminder of a few things. A reminder that next weekend, that's the 19th and 20th of November, we have John Chin. There'll be 4 shows. On Friday, it'll be 6 and 8:15. On Saturday, 7 and 9:15. John Chin and some really outstanding musicians, Joe Martin, Rudy Royston, Chad Eby, you know, our beloved, our local, our homeboy, Chad Eby.
Yes.
And I know, the two of y'all went to college together. And this is the first time y'all will be playing together since school, right?
I know, it's going to be I can't
That's
wait.
crazy, man.
It's going to be the best. I can't wait.
Yeah, so it's going to be straight fire here, man. So make sure you get your tickets for that now. Remember, tickets through all Blumenthal outlets, or go to our website, thejazzarts.org. Also, pick up a copy. It's a lot of fun, this album. It's great, and it's a lot of fun. The Anything Mo's album, which is, along with Richard Julian, we have John Chin. A lot of fun and a great tribute to Mose Allison. If you're not familiar with the music of Mose Allison, familiarize yourself with him. A cool cat, you know, a little bit off the beaten path, funny lyricist if you listen to what it is that he says through a lot of his songs. Listen and check out Mose Allison, and also check out that album Fifth that we've just been talking about through Stacy Diller, Tavon Pennicott, Lawrence Low Leathers, and of course John Chin on piano, and other musicians in their deeply personal musical statement. Again, my brother John Chin, thank you for your perspective on so many things. Looking forward to having you here with us next weekend. Just as we wrap up, I know there's a lot of things being said right now in the chat. Yes, please join us as also for Giving Tuesday Charlotte. When that comes up, of course, for instruments for a lot of our young people. You heard how the piano had such an effect on John Chin at an early age, and help us to have that kind of effect on other young men and women who are going into this music and learning more about jazz. Thank you for being with us on Conversations with Curtis. As always, my name is Curtis Davenport, and you can find me always playing the music of John Chin and so many others on my home, and that is CurtJazz Radio, always on Live 365 and at CurtJazz.com. So hopefully I'll see most of you out there next week here as we are at the Booth Playhouse with John Chin. If not, I hope to hear you or see you here next month. Everyone, if I don't see you again, have a happy Thanksgiving. And we will see you next month. Thank you to John Chin. Thank you to all of you for tuning in. God bless you, and we'll see you next time. Good night, everybody.